What's good, YouTube? It's me, your voice, going back in with another video. Sorry guys, I'm kind of losing my voice because I'm sick, so excuse me if I sniffle throughout this video. But today I want to put together a Dark World deck profile. I know we're getting a new structure deck in a couple of days here, which is super exciting. This deck has been around for a long time. It's been on and off. It's been tier 1 at some points. Shout out to Mike Balan for winning YCS Long Beach in 2011. With this deck, when it was infested with other decks like Dino Rabbit, Insectors, Wind Up Loop, so on and so forth. I know like some other players like Brandon Wigley back in the day, they were playing these in YCSs, had like a undefeated record as well. Traditionally, like we got these cards, I think back in like 2005 or 2006, 2007-ish. We got like the bad Dark Worlds. The deck was never really good, but then eventually around 2011, 2010, we got like these new cards, Grapha and Snow, which ended up being super powerful. And then in a couple of days, we're going to get even more support for this deck, which is super crazy. Essentially, how this deck works is that you would discard these cards by card effects, and then when they're discarded by card effects, they trigger effects in the graveyard. And then they also have secondary effects that are a little stronger. So that happens when your opponent discards it. So when it's discarded by the effect of an opponent's card, you get an additional effect, so to speak. And like back in the day, people would play like Drag Down from the Grave as well, just to like see what your opponent's hand was, so you can rip a card out of both and then like set all your cards and then just like leave monsters in your hand so you discard them. But it was also a reason why you wouldn't play cards like Dark World Dealings, because of the fact that if you were playing a mirror match, like you in a blind matchup, this card allows your opponent to discard the card that they choose. So if it was a mirror match, you'd kind of get wrecked, in given that they would discard one of their Dark Worlds and then get the second effect because of the fact that it was discarded by their opponent's card. So diving in really quick. 3 Grapha, everyone knows what this card does. If you don't, essentially when this card is discarded, you get to pop a card on the field that your opponent controls. And then if it's discarded by your opponent's card, you can actually look at the card in their hand, and if it happens to be a monster, you can special summon it to your field. Not the best secondary effect, but again, this is like your main guy because of the other effect. You can special summon this card from your graveyard by bouncing back one Dark World monster you control to the hand, except Grapha. So essentially, this will allow you to bounce any of the Dark Worlds back to your hand, so you can reuse them for their effect when they're discarded again. And bear in mind that these old Dark World cards are not once per turn. So this is before the time that we had like hard once per turn effects. Back then, like a lot of effects were just like you had free reign. You could use these as many times as you want because of the fact that it was a little harder to trigger them multiple times per turn. But again, if you have like 3 Graphas in your graveyard, you could literally bounce 3 monsters you control, get 3 Graphas back. So bear in mind, these old cards are not once per turn, but the new ones, I think some of them are. Snow as well, it's not once per turn. If this card is discarded to the graveyard by card effect, you can search your deck for any Dark World card. It could be any card, it doesn't have to be monster, which is kind of crazy because a lot of these newer Dark World cards are just cards that do a lot of cool things. And then if it's discarded by your opponent's card effect, you can, I think you can target. Yeah, the old wording is really confusing. They really gotta like get out of this because I still don't understand how to read this, but I know what the effect is. So if this card is discarded to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard and then special summon that target, which is kind of like a nice little plus. The only bad thing is this deck is kind of like, obviously it's a dark deck that activates in the graveyard, so we already know that there's another dark deck that activates in the graveyard that happens to be the best deck in the format that people are siding hard against. So yeah, the Bystials, Abyss Dweller, like those things definitely hurt this deck. And then given that a lot of these effects actually do revolve around the graveyard as well, the Ishizu Shufflers kind of bite into this deck. So you do have to do your due diligence and like build your deck in a way to beat that. That being said, I think going first, this deck is a lot better, but going second, we might have to make some tweaks, maybe some changes in the side deck as well, play things like Droplet just to get around cards like Abyss Dweller. But again, back to the deck. So this is essentially a searcher. It can search any monster. It can also search itself. There's no restriction that you cannot search Snow itself. So back in the day, there was actually a play where sometimes you just cycle through 3 Snow for the sake of like having discard fodder, to activate your effects. So you end up just foolishing 3 Snows. You can add any card basically that has Dark World in its name, which is super critical. Hence why we play 3 of each of these. And then moving on to the newer cards. So, okay, Genta Gateman of Dark World. This is a new card. You can discard this card in the graveyard, add 1 Gates to the Dark World from your deck to your hand. And that's the field spell that allows you to discard a card and then draw 1. So this is essentially one of the main discard outlets that are in this deck. We're going to discard this to add the field spell, so then we can activate the field spell by banishing this card to discard one of our Dark World monsters in our hand. The other effect is if this card is banished and you control a Dark World card, you can special summon this card. You can only special summon this card once per turn. So key things to note about this card: the discard effect is not once per turn. So you could technically discard 2 of them to add 2 Gates of Dark World. Let's say if your opponent Cosmic Cyclones the first one, you can add a second copy. And Gates is not once per turn either, so obviously we can use it as much times as we want. And then you can special summon this card when you control a Dark World card. So how does this work? Well, you discard it, you add Gates of Dark World, you activate the Gates of Dark World, which is a Dark World card, and then immediately by banishing it for cost using Gates of Dark World, because Gates of Dark World effect is you can banish 1 feed monster from your graveyard, discard a card, a feed type card, and then draw a card. You can special summon this back because it's banished and you control Gates of the Dark World. So it's super, super nice. This card essentially gets you 2 things. It gets you itself as a body on the board, level 4 extender, and then you get the field spell as well. So it's a free +1 without using your normal summon, which is actually just crazy if you think about it. And again, rank 4s are really, really powerful in this format right now, given that they're clutch cards, you know, like Abyss Dweller, Exciton Knight, Baguska, that are good against rogue decks. This card is actually really, really insane. Moving on, Rainbow Supreme Overlord of the Dark World. This is a new boss monster that's in the structure deck. You can special summon this card from your graveyard by returning 1 level 7 or lower Dark World monster you control to the hand. So it has the same bounce effect as Grapha, but it has to be level 7 or lower. And these two being level 8s means that you cannot bounce either itself or Grapha. So you cannot bounce Grapha or itself to special summon itself. And then the other effect is, if this card is discarded in the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 level 5 or higher Dark World monster from your deck to your hand, except himself. Then, if this card is discarded from your hand by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower Dark World monster from your deck or graveyard to either field, non-targeting. Pretty cool that they added deck on that. So, like, obviously, if there are Siege Shufflers, we don't really care. We can special summon a level 4 or lower Dark World monster from our deck to the field if it's off fire opponent's card effect. And obviously, you guys are thinking, like, how are opponents going to discard? There's nothing like that in the meta. Well, this deck has built-in ways to make it so your opponent makes you discard off your own effects. It's kind of weird to think about, but I'll show you guys in a sec. So this card, another thing to note is that this card can actually, you can bounce this to special summon Grapha. So let's say you have Grapha and Rainbow in the graveyard, and you have like a Snow that you normal summon on the field. You can bounce Snow for Rainbow, and then you can bounce Rainbow for Grapha. You just can't do it the other way around because it has to be a level 7 or lower to bounce for his own effects. So you cannot bounce Grapha. But that doesn't matter because Rainbow is actually nicer to have in hand. Obviously, being able to discard it to add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster to our deck to the hand, including another copy of Grapha, including Silva. You know, I think this card is like really nice that you can bounce 2 cards essentially. You get Snow back and you get Rainbow back. So off on Grapha, you essentially get like 2 cards back to your hand for just like bouncing, non-inherent as well, so it doesn't activate the graveyard. Dollar doesn't stop it. And this does have 3k attack, which is super, super relevant because Gates gives it 300, so you go up to 3300 automatically, which gets over a lot of things in the format, like Tier Limits Kaleidoheart, for example. And again, this card is actually not once per turn either, which is kind of cool. The special summon is not once per turn, and neither is the discard effect, which is kind of neat. Okay, and then we're playing some loose one-ups. Lucent Netherworld of Dark World. This is kind of like an older card that was like newish support. I think it came out in the past couple of years because it does have updated text. If this is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, special summon it from the graveyard. Then if this is discarded to your graveyard by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 fiend type monster from your deck to either side of the field, which is super important. We say either side of the field because some of these effects make your opponent discard. So if they're on your opponent's side of the field, they would make you discard because you're the opponent of your opponent. And then this is nice, again, being a free extender as a 2400, as well as a level 6, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, which combos with the B-Steals, so you can special summon things like Beatrice or Wallow. Really, really cool. I didn't have room to put Beatrice in there, but it could be something you could experiment with, being able to do Foolish, Sagrafa, or a Rainbow as well. So this is just like a free extender, as well as the opportunity to special summon a monster from your deck. And then Silva. This is like one of the most critical cards going first. Obviously, this is like what the deck can do. It can potentially loop this card as well, because again, this card's not once per turn. If this card is discarded to the graveyard by a hand card effect, you special summon from a graveyard. Then if it's discarded by your opponent's card effect, you can your opponent is forced to return 2 cards from their hand to the bottom of the deck. So essentially, we can essentially loop this card. If you have a way to bounce it back to your hand after you summon it, like with a Grapha, discard it again somehow by using an effect that would make your opponent make you discard. You can make them shuffle back up to 4 cards. So they would start their turn with like 2 cards after drawing for turn. Really, really cool. Again, we're only playing one of these because these cards don't really do anything by themselves. They're just free extenders. So I feel like being searchable easily off of Snow, obviously, and also off of Rainbow, I think you should just play one of each. But let me know if you guys have any suggestions in the comments. And then beige, this is a free level 4 extender. If it's discarded, you special summon it. It's just a clean level 4. Again, we're making rank 4s in this deck, so like a Mist Dweller. You can make Dugaris as well. A lot of cool things to consider. And then Cerulli. This is one of the key ways that your opponent would make you discard. So essentially, if this card is discarded in the graveyard by a card effect, you special summon it to your opponent's side of the field, and then when it's special summoned by the effect of Dark World card, your opponent must discard one card. What does that mean? Well, that trigger effect activates on their field. So you're the opponent of your opponent. So you would discard. But because it's your opponent's card, you would discard its by the effect of your opponent. So your opponent's making you discard, so you get any of these effects. So essentially, as long as you can get Cerulli into the graveyard, you're turning on all of the secondary effects of your Dark Worlds, including Silva. So, an easy combo would be like discard Genta, activate Gates, discard Cerulli, draw a card, special Cerulli to their field, discard Silva, special summon Silva, make them put back 2 cards, for example. And it's nice that it special summons to your opponent's turn field because they cannot imperm because they control a monster, and it also shuts down evenly matched. So kind of like cool neat things to keep in mind there. Next, we're playing 3 Tour Guide and 1 Doomdog Oxgrowth. I just got this inspiration from a cool guy on Dueling Book. His name is Angry Arab, so shout out to him for suggesting this engine. But essentially, Tour Guide, this deck doesn't have a lot of good number summons, but Tour Guide is insane. It used to be really, really good. And you know what? I think you should actually play Brow as well, because it's another Tour Guide target that you could potentially summon. I totally forgot about Brow when I was making this deck. But essentially, this special summons a level 3 Fiend monster, and then you can make some plays from there. Obviously, being able to summon Brow, you can bounce it back off of Grapha. This is an old play back in the day. You can also summon Leviator the Sea Dragon. That's another card that I should definitely play in. I didn't even think about the rank 3s. But okay, guys, like Leviator the Sea Dragon is another good card. You can overlay into special summon your banished Ganta, for example, or special summon one of your banished cards that you banished off of Gate. Doomdog Awkward, this is a Duel Links card. Essentially, this is a tour guide target. When this card is sent to the grave, off the field, you can add 1 level 8 Fiend monster from your deck to your hand, so Grapha or Rainbow. How this works is you go Tour Guide, normal summon, effect, special summon Doomdog, you overlay, or sorry, you link off into one of your link 2s, including either Cherubini or not IP, Muckracker from the Underworld. This is a newer card that just came out of the new set. When this is link summoned, you get a search, so you search Rainbow or Grapha if you need. And then for this card, you can actually discard a card as a card effect. To target 1 Fiend monster in your graveyard, special summon it. This is super, super cool because off 1 Tour Guide, you summon Doomdog Outgrowth, you special summon Muckracker, you search Rainbow, and then you can discard the same Rainbow to special summon back either Tour Guide or the Doomdog. And then boom, all of a sudden you're getting like your engine started. You have 2 monsters on the field and you get a search off of the Rainbow. So like it's pretty crazy if you think about it. The other thing you can do is actually make Cherubini being 2 level 3 monsters, and you can Foolish level 3. And this idea I also got off Angry Arab, but you can discard a Goki Pole from your deck, and then when this is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 level 4 insect monster, which is the Danger Mothman, which is another discard outlet, as well as a level 4 body that you can make level 4s rank 4s with easily. So that's kind of like cool things you can do with Tour Guide, being really, really flexible. This was a very powerful card in this deck back in the day, being able to overlay exactly into Levier or special summon a Brow, so you can bounce off of Grapha. But again, in this deck, it's also very, very clutch. So let's just add Brow there for now. You could obviously play more copies if you have more discard outlets. That's another option as well. When this card is discarded by a card effect, you just draw a card. If it's discarded by your opponent's card effect, you draw 2 cards. So fun things to note. Okay, this is where like it might get a little wonky. You guys haven't seen this card before. Salamander Catalyzer. This is a newer card that was a TCG exclusive that was kind of swept under the rug, but I think it was made exactly for Darkborn, given that it's a Fiend monster. And the effect is you can reveal this card and 1 Fiend monster in your hand, special summon 1 of them, and discard the other. So, yeah, boom. This is essentially a danger monster that allows you to pick what you want to discard. That's pretty cool if you ask me. So, essentially, you would reveal, like, for example, a snow, and this card, you discard the snow, special summon this card, catalyzer to your field, search off the snow, and you have a free level 4 extender on the field, which is a lot better than some of the wonky danger levels, like the level 3s, because of the fact that we can make rank 4s easily. Then the other fact is, when a monster is destroyed by battle involving your Fiend monster while this card is in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So that's really, really cool, given that it's like a card in your grave that you can add back in the grind game nonstop to be a reusable discard outlet. And it triggers when your monster destroys one of your opponent's monsters, which is a lot better than your monsters getting destroyed by theirs, because the onus would be on them to crash it or like you crashing it during battle. So I thought this was a lot better than just playing random dangers. Obviously, the dangers being rank 8 is kind of cool that you can overlay for rank 8s, but I just feel like they're kind of dead when Dweller's on board. I mean, I guess this card is too, but it allows you to pick what you want to discard, and being a rank 4 is super important, in my opinion. And then obviously the Gokipo and the Danger Mothman being able to send it off of Cherubini as a cost is really, really cool, given that it's a free plus off of Tour Guide. Moving forward, we have the 6 Bystials. I think it should be a standard going forward, especially if you're not playing Tier Elements, which is the best card, best deck in the format. Being able, obviously, to pair with Lucent that you can search off of either Snow or Rainbow to special summon a Beatrice or a Wallow is also very, very fire. I think this extra deck might need some work so we can fit in Beatrice, because now that I think about it more and more, it definitely should come up, being that you can Foolish either a Gokipo to add a Danger Mothman, or you can Foolish one of these guys, the Rainbow or the Grapha for free pluses. Moving on, Dark World Ascension. Or sorry, actually, we should skip this card. Tier limits have this. This is a random card that I thought I would include in this deck. Essentially, how I was thinking this could work is as a hand trap in this deck. You obviously be able to Foolish 3 cards. You can dump either Grapha or Rainbow, and then being able to Foolish itself, you can actually fuse for the new Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, by using Grapha. All it needs is a Dark Monster plus a Grapha. So I know some tier limits that might even splash like King of the Swamp to be able to make this off a tier limits effect. But again, you can make this really easily. You can also discard it off of Dark World Ascension to fuse, and then you can fuse into a Grapha, and then also the effect of having this trigger, allowing you to make a second copy of Dragon Overlord. So I just thought it'd be neat as a hand trap, as well as putting a body on board that's a dark extender that's a level 3. So you can potentially make Levier or like Link plays. For example, Cherubini or Muckracker. Obviously, it's not like a standard by any means, but it was just a cool idea I had to splash this into here. So if you guys let me know how this is, because I haven't actually tested it. It's more theory. Moving on, Dark World Ascension. This is a quick play spell card. During the main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Fiend fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials from your field and or graveyard. So it's like a Miracle Fusion quick play. You can actually banish Grapha plus a Dark Monster to special summon it. Then the other fact is, if you're fusion summoning a Dark World fusion monster this way, which you always are in this deck, you can actually discard monsters from your hand. So they get the discard effects as well. If you're discarding like a Snow and a Grapha to fuse, then you immediately get the effect to search as well in the pop. I'm only playing 1 because it is searchable, and it's only once per turn, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think you'd probably just play 3. But the other fact is, during your main phase, if this card's in your graveyard, you can add it to your hand, then discard 1 Dark World monster. So again, a reusable discard outlet, and you can use it exactly on the same turn that you do fuse when it's in your graveyard. So that's really, really cool. And then Dark World Library. During your main phase, you can discard a Dark World monster, and if you do, all Dark World monsters you control gain attack equal to the discarded monster's level times 100 till the end of the turn. And then if your monster whose original type is Fiend is discarded by the effect of a Dark World card or an opponent's card, you can discard 1 card, draw 2 cards. I just thought this was kind of neat. It's obviously a searchable discard outlet again, and then you can discard... on top of that, after you discard, you can just use a trigger effect to discard another card and draw 2 cards. I thought it'd be kind of neat to be able to draw. I don't know if it's necessarily mandatory. I don't know how good it is, given that it is the continuous spell, which is a minus, but I thought I'd try it out. Holy crap, this video is really long. Okay, diving ahead. Gates of Dark World, all Fiend monsters gain 300, and then you can banish a Fiend type from your graveyard, discard a card. So as you can see, this card deck doesn't have a lot of discard outlets. Obviously, we're trying to maximize our chances to get to Genta and then Gates, or use Salamander Catalyzer, or like Tour Guide into our Danger Mothman, or use Muckracker. So I think it's a lot more consistent that way, but definitely needs some testing. And then Called by the Grave, because we don't play tiers, so like, yeah, obviously we'll just go against the best deck in the format. Why not? Okay, side deck, just some back row removal, 3 Twins, 3 Harpies. Obviously, they discard its cost, so you don't get the effect. But again, being able to discard like a Grapha or a Rainbow so we can bring it back is always free, so why not? 3 Skill Drain. This is obviously to mitigate the non-tier decks, so like Flunders or Sprite when they shifter you, because again, shifter is good against this deck. Going first allows you to sort of equalize that. And then 3 Imperm, 3 Serener. We sided at 1 gold. This is like really, really good against rogue matchups, I think. So being able to pop 2 cards when this card is discarded by your opponent's card effect, you can pop 2 cards on the field. So it might be come in handy against decks like Flunder where you have to pop Floodgates or whatever. And then 1 card destruction. We don't want to main deck this because it sucks against tiers. They get all their effects as well. But against rogue decks like Sprite and Flunder, oh yes, we are definitely card destructioning and going like +5. Side deck, 2 Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World, 1 Dark plus Grapha allows you to fusion summon this. And then when your opponent activates a normal spell, trap card, or monster effect, you can quick effect make this effect become your opponent discards 1 card. So essentially, as an Omni Negate, it makes the effect of whatever they activate become the effect your opponent discards 1 card. And because it is your opponent's card, you get the secondary effects of your Dark World monsters. And then if this fusion summon card leaves the field by opponent's card, you can special summon one of your banished or engraved Grapha Dragon Lords. So kind of nice floater effect. Rank 4s. Okay, Baguska, obviously good against Rogue when they shift you. Dweller, really, really good. Dagaris, this is really relevant because it does allow you to discard. The effect that you skip your next draw phase, also draw 2 cards to discard 1 card is super, super neat, given that this is a free discard outlet off of 2 rank 4s as well. So it's kind of like Time Thief Redoer in the tier limits deck, given that it fulfills a similar role. Exciton Knight, obviously good against Rogue. Hope Harbinger is really, really good card as well for rank 8s when you have Grapha and Rainbow or 2 copies of themselves. Zeus, obviously, again, like being able to make it easily with their rank 4s. Wallow and probably Beatrice to an extent because you can make a lot of cool plays. Muckracker, we went over this. When this card is on the field, you can discard a card as a to special summon back one of your fiends, so you get the discard effect. This is basically made for Dark Worlds as well. And it has a protection effect as well. You can actually tribute a fiend monster you control to if a monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect. So kind of neat. Cherubini, obviously really good to be able to Foolish, a Goki Pole, and search Mothman. IP Masquerade and Unicorn for like clutch turn 1 combos. And then Akashic Magician, you can actually bounce back the card that it points to when it's summoned. So you can bounce back your Dark Worlds to get their effects again. And then Dark, because you guys know Dark is really, really good. So that's about it. I'll probably think up some combos if I can drum them up, and I'll show you guys another video. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions, let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.